Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gnomon live stream. I'm your host, Adam Hartel. And if you are new to Gnomon, if you're new to this live stream, Gnomon, as you saw in the intro reel there, we are a 3D art school located in Hollywood, California, and we specialize in training artists for careers in games, animation, and visual effects. And this live stream, we host a lot of different kinds of live events, interviews, art jams, and so forth. So if you're interested in the world of visual effects, 3D modeling, and animation, this is the place to be. And we've got a really cool stream planned today. This is part of a series of streams we've been doing where we have actually been interviewing our instructors at Gnomon. Every instructor at Gnomon is a working industry artist. And so if you're in a classroom in Gnomon, you are in the classroom with someone that is coming in to that space and teaching you the workflows that they use on a day-to-day basis in their studio. One thing I should mention about the stream is if you are in need of closed captioning, you can head over to our Facebook live stream where that will be available for you. And this stream will also be available as video on demand on both our YouTube and Twitch channels after the stream if you need to go back and watch something you missed or share it with a friend. So with that, I would like to introduce our fantastic guest that we have with us today, who is David Stripinis. He is a lighting and rendering supervisor at Encore VFX, and for over 25 years, David has been a contributor to the front lines of visual effects animation or innovation from his early days working in the video game industry with Rogue Squadron series to lauded feature films, VFX such as Man of Steel, Ant-Man, and Interstellar. From helping to create and innovate the new world of virtual production on Avatar to episodic works like Westworld, The Mandalorian, and The Orville, he considers himself fortunate to have worked with so many smart, talented people over the years. In addition to heading up the lighting department at Encore VFX, he now teaches Houdini and fluid dynamics at the Gnomon School of Visual Effects. And with that, I'd like to say welcome to the stream, David. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, good to be
here.
Hello,
sir. Yeah, wonderful to have you.
Glad to be here after internet crashy issues this morning.
Yeah, you know, you slid in like right at just the right time. I mean, This is basically live television. So as far as I'm concerned, that's par for the course, right?
Yeah.
You had some internet crashes, and you managed to get started back up and jump right on the stream right on time. So yeah, it's great to have you here. What we typically do on these streams with our instructors is, first we want to get to know you a little bit, hear about, what your early inspirations were and how you got on this journey, and kind of how you got to where you are today. So would you mind talking to us a bit about that?
Sure. So, as I constantly say in my classes, I'm old. I've been doing this for a very, very long time. And I actually got my initial interest in visual effects and film as a whole when I was a kid. My parents got a VCR very early, and we had a small little video store in town, and every Saturday night and every Friday night we would go and we'd watch movies and everything like that. And I remember, I very much remember very distinctly seeing Star Wars for the first time. And it was, absolutely, I didn't see it in the theater, but I remember just being blown away by it. And We had actually seen Empire Strikes Back at the drive-in before that, but I was so young I didn't really remember that. But I saw Star Wars and it registered that this was something amazing. And then when Return of the Jedi was coming out, I was obviously like a huge Star Wars kid at the time, but I did extra chores for a couple weeks so that my parents would let me stay up late and see a making of Return of the Jedi.
Oh,
And
wow.
um, that was that was a big deal because one, I was staying up late, which was cool when you're 7 years old. But I didn't know that making movies was a job, right? I
Mm.
didn't realize
Hmm.
that was something that people did. My perception of a job was watching my dad get up and put on a suit and go to the office and then come home. That's what a job was.
Hmm.
And then I see there's all these hippies wearing shorts out in the parking lot setting things on fire. I'm like, you can get paid to do that? I do that for free. Um, um, and I decided I really wanted to be a storyteller. That's what I wanted to do with my life. And it was very much so it's not that it's any easier these
Hmm.
days, but there the paths into that life is now, at least the information as to how to do it is easier,
Hmm.
right? In the 80s, it was like, where do you even get started, right?
Right.
You could maybe find magazines like Cinefex or whatever that would kind of tell you what was going on with that. And but like, even just like, who do you need to meet, who are the companies that do this, where are they, that kind of stuff was just a complete mystery.
Yeah.
um, and I kind of, and not deviated. That's the wrong way of saying it, but uh, I decided that it was a much easier thing to do to try to get into the world of drawing comic books, and because at least there you knew, like, uh, I knew people who did that for a living. Like, I
Hmm.
actually knew people who did that for a living, and I was pursuing that for a long time, and then you know I was making movies with my friends in high school, and this is really what I want to do, and was big into computers.
Hmm.
I was a real nerd growing up. Not that I'm not one now. It's just now it's both cool and financially rewarding to be a nerd. Uh,
Yes, it is.
um, but I was really into computers. I was really into illustration and all the geek stuff. And I went to see Jurassic Park. I was excited about seeing Jurassic Park, not because there's like trailers or anything like that, but because I read the book and I liked
Right.
the book. And So Jurassic Park came out, and I had seen CG before. Terminator 2 was super, super duper important. The Abyss was super duper important. And I
Hmm.
was like, And I remember seeing Terminator 2 going like, how is that done? Like I started playing around with the Blender of its day, a program called POV Ray, which was a free ray tracer you could download, and everything, there's no UI, everything had to be written out in code. And so and I remember the very first thing I ever did a CG render of, which was a chrome sphere on a checkerboard floor, and a 320 by 240 render took 3 days to render on my home
Oh my
computer
goodness.
to do
Wow.
one
What
frame.
kind of system were you using, by the way?
Oh, that was just that was a 286.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
it was 286 with like I think 2 megabytes of RAM,
Hmm.
which was actually my first PC. I was a complete Commodore guy before that,
Hmm.
um, but I was like, okay, I get this. I was like, it's math and it's I could visualize things really well in my head, and I rated my dad's briefcase because he had all of this 10 by 10 to the centimeter graph paper,
Yeah.
and I would take a very very fine tip felt pen and would plan out exactly building polygons point by point by point
Yeah.
in order to build, like, okay, here are the coordinates that are in here, and then
Hmm.
I would illustrate it from the side and like orthogonally draw it out, and then I would like lay out where my polygons were going to be and figure out what the coordinates were going to be and type those in X, Y, and Z one by one to
Yep.
build my things. Um, and then I discovered that CG programs had UIs. I was like, oh, that's much better. Um,
You had your
um,
own graph paper UI. I love it. Yeah.
but Jurassic Park came out, and I remember seeing it, and I realize these days we talk about films being groundbreaking. Films that come out like Gravity or not Jurassic, Avatar
Hmm.
or Interstellar or things that people look at and they're a step up, right?
Yes.
There's like, and we talk about being groundbreaking, but all of those films built on something that came before. And obviously,
Yes.
everything in computer graphics and visual effects builds on things that have come before. But Jurassic Park was an inflection point. It was like, for visual effects, there is before Jurassic Park and after Jurassic Park. And
Hmm.
like the film, it floored me. Like I just was there going, I, what? How? What? Like it was you couldn't really process what you had seen,
It's true.
and
Yeah. Absolutely.
and it completely changed what I wanted to do. And I went to go to school for it. And I was originally going to head off to like Cal Arts or something like that, but we had some family health issues that kept me home for my freshman year of college. I went to a state school that was within driving distance of home because I had
Hmm.
family obligations that I needed to make sure I was home on the weekends to help take care of things and that kind of stuff without going into too many gritty details.
Sure.
Um, but then I decided, like, once things were better, I was able to reapply off, and I wound up going and getting a full ride at Savannah College of Art and Design.
Hmm.
And to tell you kind of like how the world was shifting, when I got accepted to SCAD, there was 35 people in their CG program. That was it.
Hmm.
And by the time I graduated, there were over 1,500 in the
Well,
space.
and if you don't mind my asking, I'm not asking you to
Yeah,
date yourself, but like roughly what year was that?
that was 94 that we
Yeah.
started. I went to I
So
graduated.
there wasn't even a Gnomon school of VFX at that point. This was all
No,
very new. Yeah.
there was no nothing like Gnomon. There was nothing. There was like, even our program wasn't in visual effects. Our program was in computer art, and it
Right.
was it was very much a fine arts based program, just using a computer. It was the
Hmm.
same as we had people who were studying graphic design that were using a computer, but it was, you're learning to create art and of a commercial nature, but it was like painting or textile design.
Yeah.
It was somewhat focused on the commercial aspect of it, but it was more, learning about the art history of where the industry came from. And it just, everything about the way movies were being made was changing.
Yeah.
uh I mean, I started studying this pre Toy Story. I remember Pixar came to the school and showed us Toy Story a month before it was going to get released,
Oh, wow.
and I think about a month or so.
Yeah.
And again, we were just like, okay, this is another, things are changing.
Yeah.
It was, when you thought of an animated movie, it was going to be, Lion King or Aladdin, a hand drawn. That was what animation was, and this was a whole different thing. And it was also, to do computer graphics was not something you could do on your own. I talk about this in my classes, and I'm always entertained by it. It never gets old for me, because for a lot of the students, they don't realize, when people think of software like Houdini or Maya or whatever as being expensive, because Houdini's like, the high end version of Houdini is $7,500 to buy it for the first time, or Katana is like $10,000 to buy it, the initial license. When I got started, a license of software was $160,000,
Hmm.
and it didn't bother you because the computer, in order to run it, was $500,000 at the
Yeah.
minimum, and that was not something you could have in your house.
Right.
And it's amusing to me, because now I literally have more computing power on my phone, um,
Yeah.
than existed on those machines. But that's, I remember back in the day, I got a decent PC later on in my life, more than that 286, and I was using 3D Studio at home,
Hmm.
and would bring in models and stuff that I had made, and people were like, "Oh my god, how are you doing this, like, not in Alias or not in Softimage?"
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, "It's hard," because there's like it. But again, the the way high end computer graphics was done then, everything was done in a technology called NURBS, right?
Hmm.
Which is non-uniform rational B splines, is what it stands for. But you would, it was a lot more technical. But on PCs, everything was polygons, and you didn't do polygon modeling at the high end. And so it was just, where my brain came from back in those days of the graph
Yeah.
paper, was doing both constructive solid geometry as well as doing that. So
And it's really cool to see how things have shifted. Like I
yes,
think I would guarantee you that the majority of students applying to Gnomon today are not very familiar with those early days. And now you can download a piece of software like Blender for free onto your computer and do all the stuff. Granted, it might take you a while, but do all the stuff that an entire production crew digitally
it, it,
would
it
have to do just to make something.
it is, and there's pluses and minuses to that,
Sure.
right? So, but so I graduated, and
Hmm.
when I graduated, I was getting interviewed by a lot of different places, and I made some mistakes along that journey. Um, and But I wound up actually going and choosing a job um, based on its location, which is not the best way to choose a job. But I met some very nice people working on a very, like, low end TV show. But I was up in Northern California, which I chose because I was like, my dream was to work at ILM, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And being young and naive, I was thinking, hey, I'm local now, they'll hire me, right? Which is like not how it works. But
Hmm.
uh, I got to. It was neat because Pixar is very close and ILM was close, and I got to meet some people working there, and made some good friends. Actually, I have a very very good friend and mentor who has been my mentor since I was in college. Who's basically like he was the head of animation on Mandalorian and Pirates of the Caribbean. My friend Hal, a very very dear friend, and very very generous with his time with me over the decades we've been friends. Um, but just through a social interaction, I made friends with somebody who worked at LucasArts,
Hmm.
and uh, to be again, severe street nerd cred, we met playing Magic the Gathering,
There you go.
and he was like, "Hey, do you want to come up to our game at LucasArts?" And they had a regular Thursday night Magic game that I was like, "Sure." I was more interested in like, "Hey, I like playing Magic."
Yeah.
Um, and then after I was there for a little bit, they were like, "Hey, this company we're working with, they work on the Rogue Squadron and stuff. Do you want to? They're looking for somebody with your skill set. Do you want to talk to them?"
Hmm.
And just set up an interview. And that's something I always tell all my students: like, the people in your classroom, they're not your competition. They're your
Hmm.
network, right?
Yep.
They're the people around you. Are everyone else is the competition, right? Right? These are the people gonna. One of them is going to be the first one that gets hired out of your
Yep.
class, and wherever they are, um, they're going to recommend their friends,
Yep.
and so it's all about networking and that kind of stuff. And so I got in there, and then I wound up writing some papers for Game Developer Magazine and presenting at Game Developer Conference. That brought me to the attention of some people at ImageWorks who uh, were working on a upcoming mocap movie called Polar Express,
Oh yeah.
and they gave me a call and asked me if I would like to interview, and I did, and made me a job offer. And I was much more into film than video games. I love playing video games, but um, making them was not something. Um, it wasn't. It's making video games at that period of time is not like it is now. All right, in terms of um, for better or for worse. Like graphics have always been important in video games, but
Hmm.
it used to be it was more about only the gameplay experience.
Yeah.
So it was I found myself making a lot of compromises in terms of like what I would like to accomplish artistically, and just film again was way more what I wanted to do. So I
Hmm.
took that job, was at Sony for a while, and then left there and wound up through some friends at Sony. I was it was amusing because I was the difference between coming out of school interviewing and coming out of already having experience in interviewing at places was very different.
Hmm.
Um, and I got a call from a friend of mine. He was working at a company I'd never heard of. I was like, I think I've heard that name, but I'm not sure. And it was a company called Lightstorm Entertainment. And I went for the weirdest interview of my entire life because I drove an hour across LA to go in and have a 5 minute interview. And I left, and I was like, oh, I must have bombed that.
Hmm.
And I was like driving on the way home when they called me and said, hey, this was on a Friday morning. They're like, they get offered me a rate, and they said Monday morning, 7 a.m. Yes or no? We need to know now. And I was like, I'm in. Like,
Hmm.
and they basically the interview was basically to see if I was sane. Is this a guy who's going to show up not wearing pants? Type of interview. Um, and that was for a 6 week gig on a project called Project 880, and which was turned out to be Avatar. And
Wow. Oh
that
man.
that that 6 week contract turned into 3 years.
Yeah.
And I went from just being like they needed me to develop some rendering stuff for them in the back, like
Hmm.
back office stuff, and they were like, "Why don't you come out on stage with us?"
Hmm.
And I did that, and Jim liked working with me, and proved myself very quickly in that. And then it was also fun because then Jim loaned me and Nolan Murtha and Glenn Derry out to Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson to do the prototype of Tintin.
Wow.
So I got to work with them, which was really, really, especially Mr. Spielberg, was having grown up in the 80s, I love Peter Jackson's movies, but Steven Spielberg formulative to my idea of what a filmmaker is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The movie I've seen, even though Star Wars was super instrumental, the film I've seen more than any other in my entire life is Jaws. Um, I watch Jaws every single July 4th, every single year. Um, so that was a real honor. But Avatar was an interesting experience in many many
Hmm.
ways. But it was basically I got paid to go to film school, and
Wow. Yeah.
you know
Yep.
every single day getting to go to work and dealing with Jim Cameron and getting to um, see what he was doing, see like he was making decisions, and I had the type of relationship with him where not too much, obviously couldn't be too intrusive, but I could ask occasionally like why did you do this or why did you
Hmm.
do that, and you know, uh, I would get answers to those questions, and occasionally I would make suggestions as to something that would look cool or a good moment or whatever, and made it into the final film,
Hmm.
and that was amazing. So then that ended 3 years later. And just due to the way the industry has shifted, I moved to London for 6 years, working with Double Negative for that period of time. Worked on a bunch of stuff, for a lot of my students. That's a period of my career that they're really kind of giddy about because it's the stuff that they was formulaic in their lives.
Yeah.
Harry Potter and the Marvel movies and uh, Chris Nolan movies and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so it was a lot of fun. Incredibly talented people, and some of the dearest friends I've ever made in my entire life. I made there, and I'm still in contact with most of them to this day, even though the way the industry works are spread to the corners of the earth. But technology keeps us in touch.
Yeah.
And then I had a choice, which was after a certain amount of time, you cannot renew your visa any longer. And
Yes.
so you have to make a choice as to whether you go through the process of becoming British citizen or not. And I missed home. I wanted to be able to be closer to my family and all that kind of stuff. So I decided without any kind of job offer or whatever, just to pack up and move to LA,
Hmm.
and wound up back in LA. And LA had changed quite a bit from the LA I had left, both the city itself and the industry. And I wound up working in episodics.
Hmm.
Um, and episodics has been the big growth area of visual effects past few years, with the rise of Netflix and all the other streamers.
Oh yeah.
Massive demand for very high end content, and the I was able to make new friends and do that, and eventually one of the people I worked with brought me to Gnomon, and was just like it was a very amusing thing because one day I get I speak of Bo Jansen here.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
so Bo messaged me asking me if I knew anyone who could teach a dynamics class, and I was like, I'll ask around, and I did, and no one had any time for it. And I messaged him. I was like, I couldn't find anybody. He was like, dude, that was my way of asking you. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
I
oh
could
yeah, yeah.
totally hear Bo saying that too. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so what, like, and I did it, and I went into it a little hesitant,
Yeah.
to be honest. I was a little hesitant about taking it on, the time commitment, and I didn't know if I'd be any good at it, and I still have those issues about whether or not I necessarily. Oh well, someone's in the chat saying I did a great job, so um, but we all suffer from imposter syndrome at points.
Absolutely.
But I did the class. I taught that first semester, and uh, every job you do, you know, I sometimes joke at work that someone's like, "Oh, well, I don't want to do that." It's like, well, no one wants to do work. That's why it's called work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And while we're many of us are really lucky to work in an industry that is fun and whatever, it's still work, and sometimes you have to do
Yes.
stuff you don't want to do. You're not. It's not your art, right? So it's you are implementing creative decisions that you could very vehemently disagree with. In terms of like that, I have done stuff that looks awesome, and then the client has asked me to make it look worse, in my opinion. But it's what they want, and they're the ones who are giving me money, so I do what they say. Um, so when it came to the teaching, while the money is a job, so I get money for it. Absolutely, I had no idea how rewarding it would be to work with. Did that? Oops.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit of you're glitching
Okay.
out a little bit there, David.
Okay. Where did you lose me?
Sorry.
Hmm.
So, guys, while David kind of works a bit with what's going on his end, looks like you're starting to come back to us. We just started dropping frames and losing some of the audio, but
Ah,
we'll see what David's able to do. But we have covered a ton of
am I
ground.
back?
So
Am I back?
um,
Because I see you clearly.
you see me clearly. Okay,
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
I think it has something to do with your connection then.
Yeah.
Oh, but
I
our stream producer is saying that they can see both of us and hear us clearly. Maybe you guys could let us know in the chat how things are looking on your end. That would be really helpful. It's always good to crowdsource from there. So yeah, if you're seeing both of us and hearing both of us okay, let
yeah.
us know in the chat.
I have a feeling it might be the hosting software might be the issue. Um,
Okay.
but
Well, we'll carry on,
yeah.
and everybody's saying we're both doing okay. So we'll stay with
Good.
it in good
At least I
faith.
didn't. At least I didn't do anything embarrassing while I thought I wasn't on camera.
Yes.
Um,
Well,
uh,
but actually, I mean, because you've covered a ton of ground for
yeah.
us, which is really good because you also have a reel that we're going to be able to show some of the stuff you worked on, and I know that reel also covers a lot of ground.
Yeah.
So you want to set that up for us a little bit?
Yeah. So being in the visual effects industry is an interesting thing because there are three things that matter, which is your reel, your resume, and your reputation. And their importance varies over the years, right? So when you're first starting out, it's really about your reel. What can you do?
Mm-hmm.
And then as you progress, your reel is important, but so is your resume, right? Because your resume shows what your actual contribution to your project was, right? Because when you're coming out of school, in general, everything on your reel is yours, right? Or maybe it's two or three people that you worked with, like
Mm-hmm.
you're a lighter and you worked with an animator, but all the lighting is yours, right?
Yeah.
Um, but then as you get older and more experienced and you take on more senior leadership roles, um, it's about your reputation. What are you able to deliver? What do you like to work with? And my reputation there is definitely not pristine. But it's about what are you able to deliver and do for the clients and that kind of stuff. So this reel is not what I would ever suggest somebody looking to break into the industry would ever want to cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it shows where I've settled in terms of the artistic side of my career is creating sequences and creating narratives and putting together a whole kind of sequence design and shot design and a cinematographer in the digital world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this represents versus here's a really cool particle simulation or here's a really cool uh, uh, character animation moment or what have you. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
different reel than I would suggest, but this is my
Well,
the reel that got
and
me my current job.
yeah, before we show that, I think it's good to say too that yeah, you're exactly right. You're in a totally different place of your career from someone who's breaking in. So, guys, when we look at this reel, look at it from the standpoint of if you came to Gnomon, this is what you would be learning from. This is the person and the range of experience that they have, what they bring to the classroom. And it's not just, things that they have done, but David continues to work in the industry, and shapes the industry. So yeah, let's take a look at the reel in that light. So cool to see all of that together in one place. Anybody who's in your class that's watching this right now has total bragging rights. Like, my instructors worked on a few things over the years.
It is funny because I remember when I first cut my reel together, my very first reel coming out of college, or even when I was still in college. I struggled to get 45 seconds of footage together. And you do that thing where you have the long opening titles, like over and over and over.
Really dramatic, yeah.
Yeah, and then this reel, I have a Final Cut Pro project where I just have everything I've ever worked on it, like, and because I changed up my reel or whatever, and that's over 45 minutes of clips, right? And that's just like the stuff that I'm proud of. Like, there's lots of things I've worked on where I'm like, nah, not gonna put that on the reel. But yeah, so I see a question in chat, which I don't know if you want me to answer there, but I can.
Oh, you're more than welcome to. I mean, my colleague and I will help manage the chat as well. But if you see anything come in real time that you want to address, feel free.
There's just something asking about the multiple plate to CG stitch, which is talking about the work that was done on Man of Steel. So those shots, what they had is they had photographic plates, right? They had a camera movement, a wipe, or a shot of like one thing, and then they had a shot of another, and they want to turn it all into one camera move. And so what you have to do is you have to generate a camera that feels like it's all one camera, and then you're going from photography to photography that CG enhanced to full CG, then back out of CG into photography, and it all has to be completely seamless. And yeah, so that's what that particular statement means. So
yeah, and I think that's also a good segue for us to kind of turn a corner a little bit in the conversation, and that is, any of our viewers who've got questions for David, please do feel free to start typing those into the chat now. We've probably got about another 15-20 minutes left to our time with David, and we want to respect his time. But while you guys are thinking of any questions you might have, I wanted to ask you, David, let's talk a little bit about what it's like to be in our labs at Gnomon with you. What is it like to be in class with you? And maybe if you could unpack that a little bit from the perspective of someone who's uninitiated.
Well, the being in class with me is interesting. It's there's lots of bad dad jokes and puns,
Awesome.
which I tell my students, you get the knowledge, you pay for the knowledge, but the bad jokes come for free.
Entertainment's free. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very generous.
this past weekend, everyone got free candy.
Nice.
I brought candy for everybody, and I actually, the interesting thing about my class is it is. I've heard from multiple students, and I don't like necessarily brag about this, but I enforce on people. I teach the hardest class at Gnomon. What is considered? I think there are other classes that are absolutely, all the classes are challenging, and some are very stressful. You know, demo reel is definitely very 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 stressful because you're getting ready to go out into the world. But the class I teach a dynamics class, but I also teach Houdini 1, Intro to Houdini. And the interesting thing about the Intro to Houdini class is, yes, we have a lot of people who take that class because they want to go into the world of effects and will be working with Houdini for the rest of their life. But it is also a required course at Houdini at Gnomon, right? Everybody has to take it. And that means there are lots of people who are very, very scared of Houdini. And the way that they have, the way the program works and everything is very unlike other software that you use in the industry. And it can be very intimidating for people. So I spend a lot of time making sure students are set at ease. I do a lot of walking around in my class, looking at people's screens, making sure that they are getting it. And I will come over to their desk and be like, no, click here. This is, you got, that kind of stuff. But I very much stress with my students that, hey, I'm a working professional, right? So if you have questions about the industry or anything like that, I'm an open book. You're free to ask me at any time. I will sometimes, regale them with some funny anecdote or something like that. But I also try to, the interesting thing about my course is not unique, but my course is one of the ones that Gnomon also offers as an extension course, right? That working professionals in the industry can take. And one very interesting thing about LA is LA has it all when it comes to CG and entertainment, right? We have a very strong video game presence here. We have feature animation presence here. We have feature film effects here. We have episodic effects here. We have episodic animation here. We have the tech sector here. We have virtual production here. So as students who are full-time students, whether the 2-year or 4-year program are going through, the person sitting next to them could be the person who's going to be interviewing them at a job. And you can impress the heck out of them just in class by doing a good job, and you can make those kind of contacts.
Yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt, but you've brought up two really incredible points, and you're kind of doing my job for me because I'm going to talk about this after in the presentation. But it's so much better coming from you, and that is, number one, just you talked about the way that you go around your classroom and you take time individually with each student. Our labs at Gnomon are not massive classes. We've got 9 labs, but when you're in class with instructor at Gnomon, when they're in a class with you, it's a small enough group that you actually can address each student. And then the other thing you mentioned that I really want to make sure that this sinks in for our audience, David's saying that his class, if it's utilized by full-time program students and it's being utilized by industry people coming in taking it as an extension class, it's the same class. So if you're in David's class, you could be shoulder to shoulder with someone who is out there working in the industry. So, a 10-week class with David is like a little mini, it's like a mini internship in a sense. Like if you tried to get an internship in a studio, you get to learn something. You get to not only get to know David, and perform well in his class, but you also get to know other people from the industry who are going to be in the room.
One of the things, like, it wasn't even one of my students, but I was leaving my class one night, and one of the things a lot of the students like to do is be inspired by um, visual effect shots that they've seen in movies that they want
Hmm.
to recreate. Right? They're like, oh, I'm gonna make my version of that. And I
Yeah.
was walking by one of the labs, and somebody had a shot up from Thor 2 on the screen, and they're looking at it, and I like frame by frame, and I just walked in. I was like, "What are you guys looking at?" They didn't know me. They didn't know I was a professor or anything like that. It's just some person there with a backpack on,
Hmm.
and they're like, "Oh, I'm doing this shot again." I was like, "Do you have any questions about it?" They're like, "Why?" I was like, "Well, I did that shot. That's my shot." And they were just like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, I did that shot. Like, so if you have any questions about it,
Yeah.
feel free to
And
ask."
it wasn't like you're like, how dare you do something to my shot? It was more like, hey,
No.
I'm an open book. I'm here to help you. I made this thing.
Yeah, and I have a policy with my students, which is like, once you're my student, you're always my student. So even after
Mm.
people leave my class, um, and now that I'm teaching 4 classes, it's a promise I almost regret making, but I still do. But if you have questions, if you need help or whatever, just email me, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But I've had former students who have emailed me their reels when they're about to head out into the world, and been like, I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, you copied one of my shots, or you kept like that. Um, but that also gets me to like my favorite part of my job, teaching at Gnomon, which is that helping people get work. Right.
Yeah.
Um, I I had a former student who, you know, this guy, he really wanted to work in video games. Right. He was one of my favorite students that I had. I know we shouldn't say if we have favorites or whatever, but he what I mean by that is that he did exceptionally good work. He was
Hmm.
and I was It was that kind of person where I told him, like, when you are graduate, call me. Right, because I know your work is good enough that I can just kind of show you to my workplace and hire you.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And but he really wanted to work in video games. Like, that was his passion. So he emailed me, and he's like, looking for work. I was like, cool, give me your real resume. He goes, no. And he's like, video games. I'm like, okay. He's like, do you know anyone over at Riot? I was like, yeah, okay. And 20 minutes later, he's talking to the recruiter from Riot.
My
Right, because
goodness. Yeah.
I just had to, drop an email making an introduction between the two. And I have this year, now that I'm over at Encore, I had the great pleasure of actually hiring one of my former students, and that was awesome. And
Mhm.
it was an interesting thing, because my company, it's not that we had a hard policy against hiring people who are students, but professional, no matter how good your education is, no matter how, like, you could have a PhD from, MIT, and you get out into the real world, and you're like, oh, the real world doesn't work like school. Right? It's like school is always, whatever your industry is, whether you're going to school for engineering,
Mhm.
whether you're going to whatever. One of the things I always tell my students is, because they'll ask, like, what's the big difference between school and real world? I was like, you have way better computers here. Like, no one has great workstations.
That's
I was
great.
like, I've worked at places where the computer I've been on is like 14 years old,
Wow.
and because capital cost investment, right?
Sure.
So, um, but it's my company had like a kind of like, oh, we really want people who have a little bit of production experience already. And so when he asked me, hey, can I apply for this job on the LinkedIn? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, man. I was like, I can't promise you a hire. I'm not the final say on hire, but I can guarantee you an interview. Like, that's, and then from there it's on you. Like, and Alex came in, and he smashed the interview, and his work was impressive enough. And but there's still some people hesitant about, like, hey, he doesn't have any experience. And I just said, I know this guy. I know,
Mm.
like, I've had him as a student. I know how smart he is. I know how hard he works. And let's give him a shot. And he's come in, and he has just been an absolute joy to work with. For everyone at work loves him, loves working with him. My boss has specifically called him out as doing great work, and basically based on Alex's performance, we are actively recruiting from Gnomon now. We get, you
That's
know,
awesome.
Gnomon has a person or department
Hmm.
whose entire job is to help find jobs for graduates,
Yeah.
right? And we get a spreadsheet of everybody in terms of like who they are, if they're just graduated, if they're about to graduate, if uh, and all that kind of stuff. And I literally go down it and go, we should talk to this person, talk to this person, talk to this
Hmm.
person. Um, so because they're my former students who have like impressed me,
Hmm.
and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, you really, I mean, you said something really huge, which is, I think so much, like you said, when you're in the classroom is networking. If you're willing to see it that way. I know that Max Den, who is director of our DP program, he always says to students coming in, he's like, if you're starting the BFA at Gnomon, think of this as a 4-year job interview, because
Mm-hmm.
every person you meet, every person you learn with, you have the opportunity to be memorable through the quality of your work. So yeah, again, I should probably have you give the Gnomon talking,
Yeah,
but
I want
it's
to
so
answer this
cool to hear
question.
from
I
the
see.
instructor. Yeah.
I want to answer this question that Julian has put in there as best
Hmm.
advice for someone who's starting out in this industry.
Yeah.
And it is the best investment that you can make when you're starting out it's a piece of technology, but it's a piece of technology that's been around for about 5,000 years, and that is a pen and a piece of paper. And what you want to do is that um, when you talk to whoever is giving you your marching orders, right? Um, it's uh, it's coming downhill. I don't when I if me as a supervisor, my job is not to
Hmm.
interpret what I've been told the client wants, right? I have to talk to my boss and find out here's what the client wants, and then I
Hmm.
have to as clearly as possible communicate that to you.
Yes.
And if you go and it's that same thing like when you go to a restaurant and the wait staff comes over and says, what do you want? And you're like, okay, well, I need you to know I'm allergic to peanuts, so you can't have any peanuts near them. I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. And you're like, are you going to write that down?
Right.
Like, can you please write that down, because
Yes.
otherwise
My
i
life is
need
on the line.
I need to get the EpiPen ready.
Yeah.
It's like, and yes, maybe they're really great at their job and they're going to come back and your order is going to be perfect. But it's
Hmm.
just, it puts it puts your mind at ease going, okay, they wrote it down. Right.
Hmm.
So when I teach somebody a new tool at work, or when I try to give them instructions on a shop and they just show up at my desk without a pen and paper, I'm just like, no, 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 no.
Hmm.
Like, write it down,
Yep.
confirm that this is what I want, and then the second most important thing is follow through and do exactly what you're asked, right? And it's not your job, especially when you're starting out, to try to make things better, right? It's to do what because you're one part of a machine. Like, there's lots of very kind things said about my reel there in the chat, but I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, right? I'm working with many, many, many talented people. Any one shot in visual effects, there's tons of people who work on it. And, you're animating the assets that a brilliant modeler made. And you're using a rig another brilliant rigging artist has created. And it's textured and shaded with look dev created by another brilliant artist. And it
Hmm.
all comes, and then it's lit by somebody else afterwards, and then composited by yet another person. And the whole time you have a very brilliant VFX supervisor who's commenting and guiding it towards what it needs to be. So everything is a team effort, right? And part of my job as I've gotten more senior is to understand the big picture, right? To see all the different pieces that need to get into place. And I might be telling you to do something as just like, here's a small piece of the puzzle. And you're free to ask questions. I love it when people ask questions. I tell people on day one of my classes, the only bad question is one you don't ask, right? So ask questions. Don't be annoying about it or whatever. But that kind of toddler thing is like, why is the sky blue? Because that's the way this.
Right. Right. Right.
But why, but it's like if somebody asks why you're doing something, because
Hmm.
wouldn't it be better if we did this? You have to explain, no, we're doing it this way because of this, so that they then have that in the back of their head, and when they get more experience, they'll be able to build on their career and shape. That's I treat my students like I treat my junior artists at work, which is it's my job to help shape you into being the best you can be.
Hmm. Now, I want to be respectful of your time here, David. So I think we've got time for another question that's come in.
I made sure I gave a little bit of
Okay,
extra leeway, so
great,
don't
great.
we're not a hard out. Don't worry.
Sure, sure. We have one question that's come in that's interesting. They said, if I don't have Maya or Houdini, is Blender a possibly good way to get started in dynamics? Is there room to learn that in Blender?
I would not know. I am not
Mhm.
a Blender user. Um,
Do you have any other
I
recommendations?
Well, so there's actually a piece of software that I've been pretty impressed with from Jenga Effects called Embergen, which is a GPU accelerated Pyro solver, and
Hmm.
it also works well. The best piece of software, if you don't have the money to buy a Maya or Houdini or whatever. First of all, if you want to learn Houdini, there is Houdini Apprentice, which is a 100% free version of Houdini you can go and download.
Good to
Like
know. Yeah,
it watermarks it, and actually that's what my students use at home because the file format of that is compatible with the version that we have at school. So
great.
they can work on their stuff at home and bring it back and forth.
Hmm.
So you can get Houdini Apprentice for free, but in my class, I very, 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 and sometimes to my students' chagrin, stress fundamentals, right? Because tools change. I
Hmm.
began, I began, and your career is going to change as well. But like, I began as a character animator working in Softimage 3D on a Silicon Graphics platform. None of that, like half of that, doesn't exist anymore, right? There is no Silicon Graphics. Softimage is gone. But even like Houdini, last week, Houdini 19 got released, right? Houdini 19 completely changed the way Pyro works within Houdini.
Hmm.
So it's like, even if you knew Houdini 2 weeks ago, you don't know Houdini today. Like, not entirely, obviously, but that particular tool set, all the buttons are labeled
Right.
differently. So, I don't teach, and most of the professors that all the professors I have dealt with. So, but I don't haven't dealt with all of them, so I can't speak in absolutes. But I would assume as such. Um, we don't teach you how to use a piece of software, right? If you want to use a piece of software, if you want to know what this button does or that button does, you can read the manual and do that. That's not worth what our time is. What I teach is, here's the philosophy. Here's the thought process that you need to put your brain into to effectively use the workflows
Hmm.
presented by this software, which in the case of Houdini is a very procedural workflow and data driven way of working. Um, you know, it's very I find as I have gotten older and older and older, like the when you look back, the person who taught me Houdini, um, I was in one of the very first Houdini classes I think ever, which is we use Houdini version 0.8, right? And it was taught to me by a guy named Steve Levites. And Steve Levites he's one of the chief engineers over at Pixar, but he's
Hmm.
also he's the guy who created Katana, right? And he contributed to Alembic being a thing, and he's making USD a thing, and it's just like I tell my students, like, that's how it works, right? We like Steve Levites is honestly, I've been really lucky. I've worked and met many talented, smart people over the course of my career and my life. Steve is in the small handful of like that you could be like, that might be the smartest person I've ever met, type thing. And the only reason I couldn't guarantee that is I've actually met a couple of Nobel Prize winners. So, it's like Steve has an Academy Award, but like that's not a Nobel. But I learned from him, and now you're learning from me,
Yep.
and then it's going to become your responsibility to take what you've learned and move the ball forward, like make the
Right.
industry better,
Yes.
whether it's through technology, whether it's through um, different there's there's different things about every industry, but there's ways you can make the industry better more than just inventing some new piece of technology.
Yes.
And then once you're there and you've accumulated all this knowledge, you don't hoard it, right? You share it, and then you move it on, because that's how we advance,
Hmm.
the technology, the art, and all that kind of stuff. um, but yeah, so but the piece of software I would say, so Houdini Apprentice is a big one, but also um, you have things like Unreal Engine, which are completely free,
Hmm.
which is a very important thing in this. Unity is also free, but I myself am not a Blender user, so I couldn't speak to its use in dynamics.
Yeah, no worries. And like I know even our Gnomons founder Alex Alvarez has been using Embergen in Unreal Engine. Different things that he's executed in some of the like the short that he did recently. So it's great to know that there's so many actually free industry level type tools out there. But I love the point that you made. Again, you're making all my points for me here, and that is at Gnomon, we're not a software school, and what we mean by that is exactly what David said. We're teaching the foundations of good VFX, and then we're teaching you how to use tools to execute those principles. But the idea is every Gnomon student should be able to graduate, go on into a studio, and know what it is they're trying to create, and then pick up any tool and use that to make that thing, to make
Yeah,
something that works well.
you would never go to a traditional media art school where they're like, well, we're going to teach you how to use Prismacolor pencils,
Right.
right? It's like they're going to teach you light and
Yep.
form and color
Precisely.
and all those kind of fundamental skills, and I,
Hmm.
I treat my classes the same way.
100%. Yeah, it's a great analogy. I love that. We have another question that's come in. They're asking, what does your work look like outside of production work?
Um, uh, I want to couch this in a way that doesn't make me seem like, again, a bitter old man. Um, which is, I have been doing this a very, very long time. And if you think about it, if you work at Starbucks, the last thing you want to do is come home and make yourself a cup of coffee. So what I actually do when I'm not at work is I try to do stuff within CG that is not related to anything I do at work.
Hmm.
Right. So and that has changed over the years. But
Sure.
I try to always do the new thing or the uncomfortable thing for me. So when people ask me about my skill set and like what like, oh, you've done this and this and this and whatever, and they're like, is there anything you're not good at? I was like, it's anything involving a Wacom tablet, right? Like um I cannot paint a texture to save my life. I cannot. I can look dev. I know how to create shaders,
Hmm.
but painting textures using ZBrush is like it's like somebody fumbling in the dark for a light switch for me. So right now, that's like kind of where I'm spending most of my time. Is I'm trying
Oh,
to
cool.
learn. I'm trying to get better at ZBrush. I'm trying to
Hmm.
get better at Substance Painter. All that kind of stuff is because you always have to be moving forward, and the new
Yeah.
stuff comes along, and stagnation equals death,
Hmm.
both in terms of your career, but also mentally. Um, and so that's where I'm mainly spending my time right now outside of work. My work is rather intense right now, so my main thing outside of work is sleep. is
That's a
is
good one. That's a good
Yeah.
hobby. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because that's also not to uh, be, oh, poor pity me, but it's like I do have my full time job and then I
Hmm.
teach all weekend, so it is a little bit, and spend time with my students and that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit like my free time. I like to spend things like going outside and lifting weights and doing things that don't involve sitting in front of a computer
Hmm.
or TV or anything like that.
Yeah. I love the thing you said about, picking up ZBrush, Substance Painter, doing things that are growth edges for you, even if they might not be directly related to your day to day. I found for myself personally as an artist, if I don't rule out something as an option to learn, if I go, well, I'm not into that, and so I'm not going to learn that thing. If I am curious and go after that and learn it, it actually has an influence on how I approach other things. You're developing your eye and different skills.
It's also important as you get up there in terms of seniority is you need to be able to talk. It's a team effort, right?
Yeah.
And you need to be able to talk even if you aren't an effects artist. You need to be able to talk to the effects artists in a way that they're it's not like they're treating it like a foreign language or whatever.
Yeah.
Or and the same thing like on the creative side, like being able to talk with filmmakers in a filmic language.
Hmm.
One of the ways that has helped me um, to somebody is making a Coke Zero. I don't know if they saw me drinking it, but yes, Coke Zero is an important part of
Yeah.
caffeine is a very important part of every artist's life.
Yes, we're not endorsed by Coke on this stream, by the way, guys. That's
Um,
just for free.
but the it's I part of my career advancement has been about the fact that I have been able to, when I'm talking with a filmmaker or a showrunner or something like that, I can reference some obscure movie from the 70s or something like when they're like, oh, I want a shot that kind of like I was like, oh, you mean like in Lawrence of Arabia this, and they're like, yes,
Hmm.
exactly that, right?
Hmm.
And so that kind of ability to not just be like I find a lot of effects artists get very kind of inside the world of effects and talking about like sops and dops and all that kind of stuff, and it's just like,
Sure.
okay, what's the goal? What are we trying to visually make, and not get obsessed with how we're making it. But yeah, so a lot of my time not at work is spent being not at work.
Yeah, and that's good. Yeah, got to keep your sanity too.
Yeah.
There's a kind of a combination of a comment and a question that came in that I think is a great point to finish on. So the comment I want to read came in on Twitch. It says Dynamics 3 is an incredible course. Never had a class like it before or since. Very challenging. Knowledge made way more accessible and understandable. Thank you, David. And I want to dovetail with that comment and you had mentioned, I think it's your Houdini class is a
Mhm.
required class at Gnomon, and that's one of the things we do at Gnomon is we'll teach the entire production pipeline to all of our students, regardless of what you want to do professionally after school. So I'm going to kind of play new student, and I'm going to ask you the question, David. Well, what I want to do professionally in the industry is not related to things that we'd be doing in Houdini. So why is your class a required class, and why would that be helpful for me in my career?
Well, for Houdini itself,
Hmm.
uh, Houdini has been the little, definitely not little, but for years and years and years, Houdini has been sitting there, like completely taking over the world of effects, right? And it's you pretty much every effects department at every visual effects company in the world is now completely based in Houdini. However, now Houdini is starting to take over the world of lighting, right? And my company, our entire lighting platform is Houdini, right? So we light all of our shots in Houdini, but that means because we're lighting in Houdini, that means all the look dev has to be done in Houdini, and that means all of our assets have to wind up being in Houdini. So
Mm.
if you're a character modeler, yes, you start off in ZBrush and you start off, and then you take it to Maya, but then it lands in Houdini. But if you're building an environment, that environment has to be built in such a way that it's Houdini friendly and RenderMan friendly. Um, but we're not alone in that, right? Houdini is a major part of the lighting pipeline at Framestore, at
Hmm.
Technicolor companies like MPC and Mr. X. It's a major part of the workflow at games companies. I've had many games companies people from Naughty Dog and Treyarch and Insomnia come through my class because they're bringing Houdini into their has nothing to do with effects at all. They're building
Hmm.
environments. They're building assets. I this past week I do a demo. And it's like my class like ramps up, and week 3 is always fun in my class because my students are like, oh god, oh god, oh god, week 1, and they're like, oh god, oh god, oh god, week 2, and then week 3, I'm like, okay, guys, gals, the easy part is over.
Right.
Right. So, and they're like, oh, but I do this thing in week 3 at the very end of the class where I make a rock. Right now, I make a rock, and it takes me like 10 minutes to make a very simple rock. And then I press a button, and then I make 1,499 more rocks in 5 seconds. Right. And they're all different.
Yeah.
And you just see this like light in people's eyes where they're like, okay, I think I get why this is powerful. Right. So for Houdini itself, people are starting to see the value outside of effects.
Yeah.
Because what side effects, I cannot confirm that this has been their plan all along, as if they've had some master plan for 20 years, but they've kind of really, really made effects their bread and butter, and had that as an income stream that has allowed them to really, really develop very refined tools everywhere else in the program. And once people start to take notice of them, they're like, oh, wait, that's like awesome, right? And so other companies, or other parts of companies, are now starting to see the value of Houdini, and it is becoming a very big part of pretty much every part of the pipeline.
Yeah.
Both in visual effects, feature film effects, episodics, feature animation. DreamWorks, for example, their entire lighting platform is Houdini for all of their animated movies. But video games, it's everywhere. So people are coming into it now going like, I hear it's being used a lot more. So
yeah, I think that is a perfect place to punctuate the conversation. And it's the reason why you've got extension students, people coming and taking your class as an individual class, and people returning who've been out there in the industry and coming through and learning with you. But David, it's been fun. It's been an honor being able to talk with you today. I was smiling so big when you started your origin story, because I literally have the same story. My dad is a big nerd, and he was working in one of the first VCR repair shops in our area, and I got a VHS of Star Wars and just watched it over and over and over as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had mine was a VHS we recorded off of HBO eventually.
It's exactly the same thing. Yeah, we know we recorded it off of HBO. I fortunately was, as an infant, according to reports, present when they went to go see the movie in the theaters. But my first memory is watching the HBO taped version, because I couldn't stay up late enough to watch it. I had to watch it, on tape. But
for me, before we go, just like that, to tell you how ingrained these memories are, which is like, I know for a lot of people that 20th Century Fox fanfare, like they need to hear that and they immediately think it's Star Wars. But for me, it's that like the HBO feature where they fly through the city and they go I hear that, and then I expect to hear the Fox fanfare, and then I expect to see Star Wars.
Yes.
And
when you don't see the title crawl after all of that, it's sort of like, wait, what? Something's broken. Something's not working now. Yeah.
I was telling a friend of mine at Warner Brothers that I would pay an extra $5 a month to HBO Max if I could just enable the option to have that HBO feature presentation play before everything when I stream everything. Like it's like pay to win video games.
Yeah.
But
it was an 80s animation where you go inside the letters, and
it wasn't an animation. That was a practical model.
Whoa. That's amazing. That I did not know. That's awesome.
They built that whole thing. That was all motion control.
That's so cool. All right. Awesome. Well, we'll have to have another call where we just nerd out about that the whole time. But again, thank you so much for your time. You've dropped a lot of knowledge today. We're getting some great love for the conversation today in the chat. And everybody, as we say goodbye to David, I'm going to stick around, and I'm going to want to spend the next 15 minutes or so with you just talking about Gnomon and opportunities that are there. But David, thank you very much, sir.
No worries.
And I'll see you on campus sometime.
I hope to see you all on campus. I hope to see all of them on campus soon enough.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Thank you. So everyone, we've talked with David about being in his class. We've talked about what he does professionally, his journey. And I'd like to just take a few minutes for those of you who'd like to stick around for this and talk to you about how Gnomon's going about training artists for these careers. And you heard a lot of really great stuff from David already about our school and the way that we do things. But I'm going to get my screen share up here. There we go. And I'm just going to cover a little bit of ground about Gnomon for you. So Gnomon first started back in 1997, and David was talking a lot about the first Jurassic Park film and what a game changer that was. And one of the major things that did the landscape was because Jurassic Park set a bar for realistic CG in film, suddenly there was a massive demand for more content like that, more CG in film. But the challenge was so few artists. There's only a handful of artists around the world that could actually do the work. And so our founder, Alex Alvarez, who is an industry artist himself, started up Gnomon, started up our first digital lab as a place where artists could come and train and learn how to do this stuff. And because there was that huge demand, we very quickly blew up into being a full-blown school, full-time program. We've won a lot of fantastic awards over the years, ranked #1 worldwide in all the international schools that compete. We've won, excellence awards from our accreditors as a college and so forth. But just all of that to say that Gnomon's been around for nearly 25 years now, and we're very good at what we do. And the big proof of that is the amazing projects that our alumni work on. So here you can see just a sampling of projects that Gnomon graduates have contributed to. And these are many of the studios that you might be familiar with. These are a lot of the big names that are out there who are regularly hiring graduates from our school. Now, there's well over 800 studios, just the Los Angeles area alone. But these are the ones that you probably heard of that are regularly. Many of these come to the Gnomon campus every year. 4 times out of the year, we have upwards of 50 studios that come to our campus just to look at Gnomon student artwork. So instead of our students having to go to like a big job fair sort of a thing and get in a line in front of a table for Marvel and wait and then have their portfolio seen and then get in line for, Cloud Imperium or get in line for Blizzard, all the studios come to them. They stay at their workstation in a lab, and all of these studio recruiters come through and look at their work. And because of that relationship, and because of what our placement department does, and because of the way that we coach our students, even in their demo reel as they finish our program, we're very proud of the fact that the whole point of our education is so that artists can have careers. So you see here at the top of the screen, 97% industry placement. That was our statistic for 2019. In 2020, during the pandemic, still 94% of our graduates placing in the industry. What I could tell you is that percentage, what that means is that's the percentage of graduates from a full-time program that found a job in studio doing what they trained to do at Gnomon within just 6 months of finishing our program. And that's incredible. And we're very proud of that. So that's very much what we are committed to. We want to serve the industry with some of the best artists out there coming in as junior artists in these studios. So talking about our graduates, talking about their careers, what is it that they're learning at Gnomon? In one term, it's called digital production. Now that's going to encapsulate all of these different skill sets, things like computer-based visual effects, character and creature design, digital sculpting, character and creature animation, environment design, lighting and rendering, matte painting and compositing, game asset creation, game engines, production workflows, and world building. Now, some of those skills and terms you might be familiar with. Some of these might be new terms for you, but every one of these skills translate into the following careers. So every title that you see on the screen here is a different role relative to a different step in the digital production pipeline. And these are the majority of the roles that our graduates are going on and working in. Now, we don't have time today for me to get into every one of these, but I've picked out 4 that we're going to take a quick look at examples of to show the diversity of different things that you can do. There's different roles for different types of artists in the digital production pipeline. So the first of these is going to be character artists. And these artists do exactly what the title implies. They're responsible for creating the final 3D character or creature that the audience is going to see on screen or be interacting with in a game. This particular artist is using a piece of software called ZBrush. That's something that actually David was mentioning he's spending time learning now. And ZBrush lets you use traditional sculpting techniques with virtual 3D clay. So it makes it perfect for creating these types of 3D characters and creatures. Generally, these are all artists who also like to spend a lot of time drawing and sketching their own characters and creatures. This is going to relate to a lot of traditional figure drawing and anatomical understandings of art and things like that. If you like to draw characters and creatures, this could be a very rewarding career for you. Next up are effects artists. And these are the artists that I like to affectionately say get to sit in front of their computer all day and blow things up, just like you're seeing here on the screen. Now, this is a form of 3D animation, but because it's obviously so incredibly complex, we're talking about billions and billions of different moving particles and pieces, you cannot animate these kinds of sequences traditionally like you would do with a character. Instead, these artists are using specialized software, things like Houdini that we were talking about with David, that essentially drive simulations of real world physics. So things like fire, water, debris. It gives them kind of the palette and the toolkit they need to drive simulations to create beautifully artistic images that tell a story. And often these are the problem solvers. The director says, hey, I want to blow up a space station that's, of this size. And it's because a piece of space debris or an asteroid has hit it. We need it to look awesome. And then the effects artists are the ones that go, okay, we're going to figure it out. And we're going to make that magic happen. I like to say that our effects artists are, if they were in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, they would probably be the mage or the wizard or sorcerer. That's the kind of work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis. Next up are compositors. And the compositor is someone who works pretty much nearly at the end of the pipeline, because they're not the one ahead of them who's creating all the different animation and digital models and things like that. But they receive all of those assets from other artists, and then they weave all of those things together into a complete scene. So here you can see that the tennis court and background are 3D models. The tennis players here are actors shot in front of green screens. The buildings and props in the foreground are also 3D models with look development and texturing and lighting put on them. Additional actors are inserted. A final lighting pass is done to tie it all together, and then you animate a camera through all of that, and you wind up with a fantastic sequence like this. And one of the reasons why compositors are so important is because the vast majority of set extensions or establishing shots for film like these are being done in this way, because it's saving the director a lot of time and money, rather than having to find just the perfect real world location and to hire a film crew and get everybody together on the same day and get out there and shoot those shots. Instead, it can be put together in pieces and have complete creative control, right, over the weather and the lighting and how everything's going to look. You don't have to work with things that are outside of your control. So that's why a director brings these kinds of shots or needs for these shots to VFX studio, so that the artist can create all the different pieces and the compositor gets to weave it all together. Now we're going to jump from the end of the pipeline all the way to the beginning and talk about previs artists. Now, a previs artist is essentially a 3D animator. They're working with simplified 3D models and animation to create a moving storyboard. These days, pretty much of the entire film. So while this is working in 3D and working with animation, these are more like big picture thinkers. These are people who want to tell the whole story. So for example, for this pre-visualization for World War Z, instead of being the artist that is going to spend months and months and months just working on Brad Pitt's face, instead they're going to work with a simple version of a model that represents him, but they get to sit down with the director and the cinematographer and hear the vision for each shot and how the film needs to look and how the camera needs to move. And then they grab all these different pieces, they animated them and they put them together to kind of make the movie before they go make the movie, so that everybody else has a common vision to work from. So if that sounds interesting to you, doing animation, but kind of getting to think more like a director and a cinematographer, this can be a very rewarding career path for you as an artist. All right, so with just those 4 very different examples in mind, I want to talk to you about the way that Gnomon is going about training artists for these careers. Here's just a simple bird's eye perspective of each of our academic offerings. On the top row here, you'll see our Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, as well as our certificate program in digital production. These are our 2 full-time programs. They both require a portfolio submission along with application in order to be accepted into the program. And, the BFA obviously is a 4-year college degree program. The certificate program is 2 years, but it's actually more advanced. It's a little bit more akin to a master's level of study. Utilized by artists often who are coming from already having a degree from another school but want to really train in these things. On the bottom row, you'll see 2 other offerings that do not require a portfolio submission. We have a foundation in art design, which essentially is a portfolio building course at Gnomon. And that's just something that you can talk with admissions about enrolling in. And then we also offer well over 70 of the classes from our full-time programs are also offered as individual courses. And that's what David was talking about earlier when we were talking about extension classes and people from the industry coming in to take a single class at Gnomon. These are individual classes that are available to adult students. No portfolio submission required. It's something you can actually sign up for online today. So moving forward, we're just going to take a little bit of a closer look at each of these. The Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at Gnomon is fully accredited, which means that financial aid is available. It is definitely a full-time on-campus program, and we're very happy that with the fall term this year, which we're in the midst of, we were able to fully reopen the Gnomon campus and receive all of our full-time students back on campus in the digital labs, and it's just been fantastic. But that's where you would be in this course. And during those 4 years, we're going to train you in what we call a 3D generalist skill set, which means, like I was talking about with David, you're going to learn every step in the digital production pipeline. And David made a really good or a really good case about why that is such an important thing to do, because it's going to provide you with a foundation that then you can build an area of focus on top of if you really want to be an animator, if you really want to be a look dev artist, or you want to do modeling and texturing. And it's that 3D generalist skill set as the thing that everybody learns before they choose additional courses in one area. That is the reason why studios want to hire Gnomon students as junior artists, because they know that these are artists that aren't going to only be aware of just the one thing they want to do, but they're going to know how to fit in that pipeline and work together with the rest of the team and that kind of teamwork that David was talking about earlier. So in the midst of that, you have the option to choose one of 2 concentrations. The first concentration option is game art, which means it's going to take all of the things that you're learning for the production pipeline, but teach you specifically how to do that within game engines, which is the type of knowledge that game studios are looking for. The other concentration is in visual effects, which means you're going to have more advanced visual effects classes open to you that are traditionally were only available in our 2-year program. Some of those are going to be brought into the Bachelor of Fine Arts degree so that you can build extra skills in that area. You don't have to pick one of these 2 concentrations. You also have the opportunity within your last 4 terms in the program to pick out 4 electives in an area of your choice. All along the while being able to receive input from your instructions, mentorship from our academic mentoring center on career choices and what kind of choices you want to make and how you want to build out the type of artist that you want to be in the industry. So with this being a 4-year program, many of our students choose to stay on for the summer term instead of taking a summer break. And that allows them to finish the program in just 3 years and get out there and get working that much faster. And for those of you who are looking to, transfer from a community college or your high school student hoping to apply for one of our upcoming terms, it would be good for you to know that we also have a rolling admission, which means you don't have to just concentrate on only applying in the fall or transferring into the fall. You have the opportunity to do that in the fall, but also in the winter, spring, and summer terms, which means you've got more flexibility about when you can start the program. It also means that we have graduates who are graduating year-round at each of those 4 terms. So really, Bachelor of Fine Arts degree is the perfect option for someone who wants to get trained and industry ready for digital production and get a college degree at the same time. Next up, I'm going to just talk briefly about our 2-year certificate program. This also is fully accredited. It's full-time on our campus. And it's going to give you a little bit more of an intensive program, as I said, more akin to a master's level type of study. You're going to build your foundational 3D skills, and then you're going to choose one area of emphasized study for the remainder of the time in the program. Those would be things like, for example, modeling and texturing, or perhaps you're going to look at animation, or you're going to be looking into visual effects and so forth. So very similar kind of thing of building that broad generalist foundation and kind of picking your area of study on top of that within just 2 years. And as I said earlier, this is typically used by students who may already have a college degree and are looking to come to Gnomon for very specialized training. Next up, I want to talk about our foundation in art design. This is the course that I mentioned was a portfolio building course. So this is something that it lasts for up to a year, and there's no portfolio required. It's just simply it's something you're going to roll in by talking to our admissions advisors. But what this is intended to be is a really effective way to build the kind of skills that Gnomon is looking for in accepted portfolios into our program. So maybe you're a high school student looking to apply to Gnomon and you haven't had the opportunity to take a lot of foundational art classes. Maybe you are transferring in from a community college and art is a bit of a newer direction for you and you're looking to build up some foundational skills. This will get you into classes like figure drawing, anatomy for artists, perspective drawing, color and light theory. You're going to get into some really cool entertainment design classes like character and creature design, vehicles, mechs, environments, and so forth. All the while going through this during the course of the year, building up portfolio projects. So really, this is it's a perfect bridge, for example, from high school into the Bachelor's of Fine Arts degree if you're in need of that kind of foundational training. And it's a great way for you to learn at Gnomon, build your portfolio at Gnomon before using that portfolio to apply to our full-time program. So it's, again, something you can talk with admissions about if that's something that could be a good option for you. Lastly, I'll mention our 10-week individual courses. These are courses that are also, a part of our full-time programs. These are going to be cumulatively 30 hours of class time spread out over 10 weeks. That's a 1 3-hour class every week for 10 weeks. David's class that he talked about is one of these individual classes that's available. This is not something you have to submit a portfolio to get into. You can simply sign up for individual classes each term through the Gnomon website. And if you're looking for advice about what class would be a good fit for you, you can talk to our advisors about that. And speaking of our Gnomon advisors, I want to tell you about our admissions advisors because we do the admissions process very, very differently at Gnomon. So, for example, you can see a great photo here of Xander, who's one of our amazing admissions advisors, who's also in the chat with us today answering questions. But this is our admissions team. And each of these people are accomplished artists in their own right. And what they do at Gnomon that's so critical is they are going to help you with the application process. They are going to help you prepare your portfolio before you apply. So a lot of times I'll get a lot of questions about what does Gnomon want to see in my portfolio? And am I good enough to get a Gnomon? And what should I do about this? And what should I do about that? And what we've done at Gnomon is we've taken all the guesswork out of that and we simply talk to these guys right away. Your first conversation and your coaching process with our advisors is not going to be about them determining whether or not you can get into our program. It's going to be about them helping you build up your portfolio and develop yourself to give yourself the best opportunity at getting into our program. We want you to succeed. We want to make sure that Gnomon is the right fit for you and you're the right fit for our program. And we can teach you everything you need to know, but the one thing we cannot teach is drive. So these advisors are going to help you to understand what needs to be in your portfolio, maybe some areas you still need to brush up or learn, maybe some new pieces to develop to put in your portfolio, and they're going to help answer those questions and direct you. So I can't stress enough how useful and important it is for you to reach out to these guys. And Xander here is going to drop a link in the chat to let you know there's a simple contact card you can fill out that will get one of our advisors to reach out to you via email to start that conversation. Lastly, I'd like to mention the Gnomon campus, and this is an establishing shot outside of the campus here, but we're on a production lot in Hollywood. And as we wrap up the stream today, we're going to roll a reel of the Gnomon campus so you can kind of get an idea of what our digital labs look like and so forth. What I will say about our campus is the location is very strategic. It puts us close to the industry professionals who teach our classes. It puts our graduates very close to the studios that are looking to hire them. And most importantly, it is like being in a studio. We have 9 digital labs that are equipped with industry standard hardware and software. Those labs are open from about 9 o'clock in the morning until midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week. And the whole point of that is we want the tools and the software to be available to you. We do not want our students to have to go out and buy licenses of software or buy high-end computer systems. And the lab is the place to be to do your work, because you'll get to be alongside those other students who are in your program, or maybe even some studio professionals who are there to take individual classes. You can collaborate, you can even learn from one another, and most importantly, you can build those relationships that are going to be vital to your career as you go out and launch your own career in digital production. So with that, guys, I just want to say thank you for being a part of the stream today. Thank you to those of you who stuck around to listen to this information. I want to invite you to join further streams. We are going to be continuing this series of Instructor Spotlights. We're talking to various instructors. And we are also doing some fantastic events. One of those is our Art Jam, which has been every Wednesday from about 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time. We also have some other really fantastic live streams that are going to be launching as of next week, I do believe. We'll be starting with a live stream with Jared Kraszewski on Tuesday evenings. Jared is a very accomplished creature designer, working in 3D, working in ZBrush. And he's going to have his own stream called Creature Corner. And our very own Josh Herman, our chief creative officer at Gnomon, is going to be doing a live stream focused on creating characters called Archetype. If you want to know what times those streams are going to be at, when the upcoming streams are, please do follow us on social media. We'll continue to announce there. You can also browse our events on our website. So with that, everybody, I want to say stay safe, stay creative. We'd love to see you on the Gnomon campus. There are opportunities to sign up for tours. You can get to those opportunities via admissions. Please let us know if there's any way that we can help you. And as we close out, stick around and check out the Gnomon Campus Reel. Thank you very much.